Okay, you're finished recording your first ever album, second album, what have you. You're ready to start mastering. What's the first thing you need to think about doing? In my case here, I've got an 11-track album, Superposition, which is due for release sometime this year. And I want to make sure everything sounds good. I have plenty of headroom. Everything sounds dynamic. We can actually see that there are a few things that are a little bit out, especially here in this region. We can zoom in. You'll see that on this top part of the waveform, this waveform with some of the peaks, they come up on the positive end and there's not much on your floor. So to fix that, we're going to highlight pretty much both of those, and we're going to come over here to the phase button. I'm going to click that. And what this is going to do is it's going to computer analyze what needs to happen as far as phase rotation goes, and it is going to automatically suggest a corrective point. So we're going to hit suggest. And so this shows us that we're about positive 26, and I was right, quite high there, and you're not getting much love down here. Okay, so I'm going to trust in the machine in this stage, and I'm going to go, okay, process. Now you can see it looks a bit better. It's not perfect, but it has done something here. Now we're only positive 2 over what we were before. So let's see that again. This is the initial state. So we're seeing some of these peaks and transients or whatever way in the positive, and we're not getting as much down here. It's not severe, but let's see this transition. After phase, everything is a little bit more evened out. Initial state and in phase. And it's actually done some corrective work down here. Okay, that's pretty cool. Now, why do I want to do this? Well, I want to, at all parts of this 11-track album, I want to have as much headroom as I possibly can so that I don't have to use a compressor, that I can use the loudness feature that is built into RX to give me my commercial loudness that you would get with any high-quality production without the use of a compressor. Now, I don't like compressors. I'll get into that in a little bit. Here's another part a little bit earlier on in this mix of where down here you can see very easily that, okay, yeah, we're getting something happening here and not much love on this end. So we're going to scroll over that, go to our phase button, and say, okay, you suggest what needs to happen. And oh, look, we were negative 74 out. So I'm going to trust in the machine. I'm going to go, okay, process. And to my delight, I see that something's happened here, and it looks nice. So I'm, again, going to go back and see, all right, this is the initial state, and this is after the phase correction. Initial state, after the phase correction. And it just looks to me like things are a bit more in balance, and I'm a bit more confident looking at that than its initial state. Things look a bit more balanced. So, all right, that looks cool. What about for entire songs? I mean, these are only small parts of songs. Normally, I wouldn't do this on a grand scale, but I like this phase thing so much that me personally, I don't recommend you do this. I recommend you spend a little bit more time, but for the purposes of demonstrating, I'm going to come over here. This is an entire song. This is the first track on the album. I'm going to go, okay, let's see what this phase computation tells me about my mix. How badly out of phase is it? Suggest. Overall, not too bad. I'm out about 6 on that. Can I live with that? Okay, that's fine. Say, for instance, if we come over where things get really crazy, maybe come over here, and we'll go, this is like the 7th song, and we'll go suggest And this one says, whoa, we're up 86. So I don't like that. I'm going to go, okay, we'll process it, do something with it. And visually, I see, you have a look there, something's changed. It looks a bit more in balance, a little bit, I don't know, harmonically more sound than before. And if you have a look down here in these regions, you'll see that this is after the phase correction. This is before. Things are a little bit more extreme. And with the phase correction, everything is a bit more evened out overall. So I like that. I'm going to trust it. Now going along, as you can see, I mean, look, you can spend a day doing this, or you can spend an entire year doing this. You can go over the little parts of the album, and you can pick out what needs to be in phase. You can do that to your heart's content. It's a good idea as a first step to make sure everything is in phase. Shep's Omnichannel Stereo. I ended up using this plugin on the album, and I only did a very subtle few things on it. I didn't end up using the compressor. The compressor was turned off. But with the EQ, all I did was I boosted the low about 2 dB and brought up the highs, put this in an area around probably 9K. Just to give things a bit of transient sparkle, and no scooping of the mids or any shit like that. And I left the saturation off, all that thump extra bullshit off. And I listened to it with the compression on, and it sounded fantastic. But what had happened was, when I put out the mix pre doing any sort of phase rotation or phase correction like I should have, things ended up getting very horribly squashed. So I had to go back and say, all right, what have I done here? Everything was just slamming. The compressor wasn't working. I was using way too much of it. This mix was turned up way too high. And I forgot to just use the old adage, less is more in that case. I could have gotten away with bringing the mix up about probably 50% and it sounding okay, but it's right on the mix and right on 100 there, and I thought, it sounds really great and bombastic and everything. But when I listened back, all these transitions that happen with you having these nice little quiet areas, and then the surprise, the psychoacoustic surprise of having these big whoosh, big things happening. Look at that. It looks like a trombone at the very end. This huge rise in volume. All those things were just clouded and stifled by what the compressor was doing. And there was less of a psychoacoustic emotional impact for myself listening back. So I said, no, look, this sounds good and loud and bombastic and wonderful and all crunchy and whatever the hell. But I lost the information that I initially put into my mix that I wanted to convey at the very beginning. And I think that is really what I'm trying to express here as far as what should you do first. If you're doing dynamic sounding music, if you're doing rock and roll, progressive rock, really anything that has any kind of substance or meaning to yourself, for you, your audience, you want to make things as dynamic as possible. And I'm not against using compression as a whole. There are some things where, compression can be very helpful and also very musically pleasing. But in this instance, I was just slamming everything because I was sick and tired of listening to the mix for going on 60 days now. So my ears were worn out, and I thought, oh, let's just pop a compressor on there. Now, a funny thing that happened whenever I did pop the compressor on was that initially, wow, sounds really great and huge, and it's just opened everything up, and boom, you get this head rush thing. It only took me about probably 2 or 3 listens back to that before my ears got really tired, really, really tired. And I got to the stage where I was like, okay, this is doing more harm to my ears than good. It's doing more harm sonically than what I'm actually receiving emotionally pleasing out of my mix. But I said, no, I'm going to stop. I'm going to bring it back to the very beginning, which is the unmastered version. And let's see what we can change to give us maximum headroom and minimal squashing of all my transients, of any dynamic range throughout the mix. How can I preserve that but still get my volume? Which brings us to our next point. To get your loudness, or in my case, I'm going to speak for myself, to get my loudness, how I want things loud without it being compressed, to preserve all my dynamics and preserve the emotional impact of what I initially put in, I came here to the loudness button. Now, what does this do? It very cleverly takes the signal and raises its true loudness without you clipping. I chose the EBU R128, which I read up about, and apparently that one's the best one for streaming. Now, coming down here gives you 2 options of true peak. Maybe I can just push it to -1 dB. I don't want to go up there because maybe that's just going to crack things too much. I don't know what this thing can do because I've never used it before. Let's try it. Process. Let's watch what happens with this waveform. All right, nearly done. Whoa, look at that. Now, a lot of you thinking, all right, sure. Okay, you can just come up here and hit your gain button. You got plenty of headroom anyway, so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is somehow, I don't know what this thing does, but it very cleverly just knows where it can't go with the loudness factor and preserving your dynamic range and not clipping. So, of course, you can raise your gain. You can do all that. But why not have the machine very quickly and very easily compute for you what is going to be a good listening standard for that. If you record dynamic music, if you want emotional impact, if you want to have something that will stand out and not give your listener's fatigue, and they will want to pick up and listen to again and again and again and get something out of and still have the same emotional response to that mix, then I strongly suggest you try not compressing things. I really appreciate everyone staying with me for this long video, and I really hope sincerely that you guys have gotten something out of it. But let me know what you think in the comments, and definitely subscribe, because I'm going to have a lot more of this stuff coming up and a lot more discussion and possibly some audio examples in the very near future.